Come on in, bestie. Welcome to StoryPod, where we do the doing of story development together. Brought to you by Creative BFF. Hello, and welcome to the StoryPod podcast. My name is Ashley. All right, welcome to the podcast. That was a little bit of an awkward start just because I have not been in front of the camera for like a couple of weeks. All right, you won't know. You only know because I told you. But yeah, so it was like the old school awkwardness, the old school of like 4 videos ago, returning. But in any case, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the podcast. It will be both video and audio. And today we are doing another Storymatic story. Now I have a reason behind why I keep making these little Storymatics. This is, I think, what is this? This is like the third, maybe the fourth. I think it's the third Storymatic that I've done in some way, shape, or form, whether it's just on the audio podcast or on just like an Instagram short trying to figure out how to do social media. But we're doing it again today. Now, full disclosure, I'm not 100% sure how to bring this to video. This sort of situation, game, story development thing. Like, I can see once we start doing lives, you know, once we become real besties and we're actually in contact with each other and I start doing like live recordings, I can see then how we could play Storymatic together. But me just doing Storymatic and bringing the video to you, I'm still not 100% sure what these videos should be structured like. So if you have any tips, please let me know. The plan though for this video is in a moment or two, you will see, I'm going to interject videos of myself when I was at the office on break, and just as I was developing the story based on the cards that I drew, which you will see in the videos coming up. And then once all those videos are done, we will return here and I will basically give you the information, the characters, a little bit of character stuff. I didn't go super deep into the characters, but the characters as well as a general structure. Again, using the story circle by Dan Harmon, just as, because I think the reason I use that, I'm trying to practice this story structure, but I'm also using it for these sort of short, quick, come up with the story idea type of things, because it is a more like a more condensed to the point sort of story structure than other ones that I've used before. But in any case, I will also try to give you, if you're watching this video, I will try to give you timestamps as well, if I can figure out how to do that, so that you can skip to the parts that you care about. If you are listening to this, you just gonna be with me this whole ride, girl. You just gonna be with me on this ride, girl. So let's get into it. Here is past Ashley at the office, giving you the blow-by-blow development process, giving you the cards, all of this kind of stuff. So we'll be back in a moment. Okay, so let's pull these Storymatic cards real quick. I'm on a break at work, obviously. You can see from my white background. And also, sorry if the audio is bad on this. I'm obviously doing this on my phone. But let's see what the heart of the cards gives us here today. Okay, so hopefully we've got something we can use here. So first gold card is Runaway. Oh, it's reversed. First gold card is Runaway. And then the second gold card is Mechanic. I'm already like low-key excited about it. That's kind of like, I'm already brewing the story. All right, and then our first copper card is Suitcase That Is Too Heavy to Carry. And a rumor is going around town. Like, the heart of the cards, I feel like has low-key, high-key come through today, because there are some cards that I've pulled before that's like, what am I gonna do with this? What story can I make? But I'm like, I'm high-key, low-key, high-key excited about it. Initial thoughts is I'm thinking the genre, like first and foremost, when I saw Runaway, the genre that came up in my mind was science fiction for some reason. When I do Storymatic, I tend to go to science fiction quite a bit. So I might try to do a different genre. I don't know. We'll see. Listen, don't hold me to it. We'll see what brews over the course of the day. The plan is, while I'm here during the day, to kind of just think about the general story idea. And then when I'm at my setup, which you have already seen me at my setup at home, okay, cozy, comfy at work, I mean, not at work, at home, is to kind of like really flesh out some of the details, maybe do the, what is it called? The structure, story structure, okay, a little bit. But yeah, I'm excited about this draw of cards. I feel like something interesting is gonna happen here. Okay, so it is 100% the next day. Like, I drew those cards and girl was like lost to the world after that. So we're the next day. I did a little bit of thinking, okay, about these cards that I drew, and I saw a scene. So sometimes when I'm coming up with stories and stuff, or, you know, thinking, I don't know, just coming up with stories. Okay, let's just say coming up with stories. It comes in different ways. And one of the ways that it sometimes comes is just with a scene. I don't know the story per se. I don't know the setup, but as I see this scene, then other things start to flow. So what I saw after I refreshed my memory about what the cards were is I saw a scene of the mechanic in his shop, and because I'm doing the genre sci-fi, I've pretty much decided, because it just feels like that was immediate. Sometimes it just clicks, right? Sometimes it just clicks. So what I saw was this mechanic in his shop. The visual was that it was kind of like a large hangar, and he's not necessarily like, maybe it's not necessarily like his shop, or that might change. I might change it to where it's like he has a small shop that, you know, might work on ships, might work on robots / mech. I don't yet know everything about the world and what the technology is. But the scene that I saw was he tries to lift this normal sized or even maybe small sized suitcase, and he's absolutely not able to do it. And so he has to use like a hydraulic lift or even a robot, depending on what type of mechanic he is, to lift up this suitcase, this unassuming suitcase, right? So that image is kind of what's now forming the general thrust of the story. And I wrote some little notes down, so I'm gonna look at my paper, so forgive me, okay? I'm not looking at you right now. It's not that many notes, actually. So I asked myself a question. So is there an urban legend / rumor, bringing in that other gold card, about this suitcase that's too heavy to lift? I don't fully know everything, obviously, but I'm like, okay, is it a thing of like, if this mysterious suitcase, or if you get this suitcase, then you're like the next to die? Not necessarily like the next to die, or, you know, does some kind of requirement come when you have this suitcase delivered to you, right? Is it a horrible fate? So if that's the case, then the whole runaway thing can surround the rumor / urban legend that's going around with this suitcase. Because what I saw was, it's like, you know, it's late night or early morning. He's in the place by himself. There's a random suitcase there. He can't lift it, so he has to get a robot. The original image, of course, was the hydraulic lift, but he has to get the robot to help him pick up the suitcase and bring it into wherever, the office, his locker, whatever the case may be. It may or may not be addressed to him. Perhaps it was addressed to somebody else in the place, but now it falls on him, you know? And But prior to that, maybe one of his co-workers or something, or maybe he saw it on the news, whatever the case may be, about, you know, hey man, did you hear about, you know, this suitcase that randomly shows up? I don't know if that'll be the way. I don't know if that's kind of like cliche for the rumor to come around, or it could even, and maybe it's not like an urban legend kind of thing. Maybe it's like the rumor is that this particular gang has lost track of a very important suitcase. That might be where I go. Of a shipment delivery or whatever, and maybe he's not privy to this because he's not in the gang life, or maybe he was. I don't know. We don't know yet who this character is, but the rumor going around some segments of town, which this mechanic may or may not be privy to or part of, is that they lost part of a shipment. They're looking for a part of a shipment, and basically, if wherever it shows up is liable to be destroyed. The person is liable to be killed because maybe it's a very violent gang or something like that, and because now he has the suitcase, he has to go on the run, basically. And that opens up our quest. Now, what is the quest? What is he doing? Let's find out. And also, it may end up not being a guy. Who knows? I haven't really done any work on the character yet. But for right now, I am imagining a guy. And yeah, so I'll check back in once I kind of think a little bit more about the world and the story. Okay, so I'm back. It seems like the way that this story development is working is it's going to be probably through scenes as opposed to just random ideas. So I started to mentally expand on the scene that I shared before regarding him finding the suitcase. So what I'm thinking now is the mechanic is doing like a late night parts inventory. So say that the shop got a delivery of parts. You know how car repair shops will get deliveries from manufacturers and things like that for the necessary parts to fix the cars that have come in for repair. So he's doing that, and he's doing it with the assistant robot of the shop, right? So sorry, I'm looking at my notes. So they discover the suitcase. He tries to lift it. So it's kind of like the same thing, but he can't do it. So the robot lifts it up, maybe takes it to the office, whatever have you, because it's not on the order manifest, if that's even the right word. Is it manifest? I think so. So they go to the office. He either opens it or he doesn't. I'm not 100% sure if I want him to open it or not, but I'm going to work with, let's say that he does open it. If he doesn't open it, then maybe there's some buttons on there that kind of send off a signal. So either the opening of the case or whatever buttons he presses to try to open it sends off a signal, which alerts whoever is looking for this case. So now, as I was thinking about it, I'm thinking it's either going to be a gang or a corporation. And I'm kind of leaning to a corporation that's looking for this suitcase that they lost in the however they lost the shipment. So that kind of that created a question for me in my mind. And hopefully this is helpful to see kind of like how we are developing a story, how the ideas, begin to develop, and questions you can ask yourself. So one of the questions I was asking myself is like, what would prompt this mechanic to go on a quest, essentially, with this suitcase? There has to be a good, compelling reason, right? So if he opens it, maybe there is a hologram or a mysterious message of some sort addressed to someone, and perhaps in that message it could it could kind of give him an idea of why this suitcase is important. Maybe not, or maybe it's just kind of like a mysterious message addressed to somebody and he doesn't understand what it means. I'll have to work that out a little bit later. But in any case, whatever the case may be, I'm thinking then that the corporation or the gang, whichever one I go with, comes to collect the suitcase based on the signal that went out to let them know, like the GPS signal, to let them know where it was. And so what I'm working with right now initially is that he's happy to give over the suitcase to whoever came to collect it. Totally fine. No fight. Maybe they're not even like, you've seen too much and now we have to kill you. So maybe it's not even like that. It's just like, okay, thank you. We're going to take the suitcase. It was mixed up in this shipment. Totally fine. No problem. Here it is. But a rival gang or corporation, or maybe somebody from within the gang or corporation comes, and there's like a firefight that ensues. You know, there's a lot of death on maybe both sides, or maybe the initial team who came to collect gets slaughtered. But in the midst of this firefight that's going on, the mechanic and the robot escape with the suitcase. And the question is, why would he take the suitcase? Or why would he decide to take the suitcase? It could be that, you know, he realizes the importance. But as I'm thinking now, I'm thinking maybe he's just like, let's go, Robert, whatever the name of the robot is. And they're just escaping, and he doesn't care about the suitcase because he's like, I'm not trying to die over this suitcase, bro. But later on, once they stop, after they've hopped in whatever little flying hoopty he has or whatever, and they stop somewhere, maybe in an alley or back at his place, he realizes that Robert grabbed the suitcase, and he's like, why did you grab the suitcase, bro? Like, did you see how people were dying over it? And perhaps Robert could be kind of like a Jiminy Cricket voice of morality and reason for the mechanic. Because now I'm thinking that this robot is going to be like his, you know, sidekick, maybe like a buddy cop type of vibe or whatever. And it might be kind of funny if this robot, who is not human, actually has the morals that the mechanic should have. And I'm not necessarily setting up that the mechanic is amoral or immoral, but he or she is very much like, I'm trying to survive. I don't care about whatever this suitcase has going on and whatever, you know, whatever. So maybe the robot is like, we can't just not answer the call. Like, lives are on the line, perhaps, you know. So that's kind of what I'm working with right now. And I'll check back in once I have more to report. Okay, so just a small update regarding what the suitcase could potentially be. So what I was thinking just now is that maybe the suitcase might be a weapon or a component of a weapon, like the key to a weapon or something like that, that perhaps the manufacturer of the parts for whatever vehicle or robots this particular shop services, they manufacture those parts, but they maybe secretly, or, you know, I don't know, secretly have been producing weapons, or that's another type of thing that they do with like a government contract or something like that. And it could be that this weapon is like, there's something morally repugnant about whatever they're doing with this weapon, what it's intended for, perhaps. And so I'm thinking now that perhaps an engineer with a moral compass, with a sense of justice, actually put the suitcase in with this shipment of parts. And maybe even the message that was, you know, included with this case is them basically saying, whatever you do, do not let XYZ corporation or whatever get this suitcase. Please take it to XYZ location. You know, lives are at stake. The fate of the world, you know, that kind of a thing, right? Because listen, it's probably going to be something semi-epic. I like epic stories. And also, so side note, I also like romance. So I'm thinking that potentially this particular engineer could be a potential love interest for our mechanic. And I may or may not swap the genders. Like, so maybe the mechanic is a woman and maybe this engineer with the heart of gold is a man, or I might, I'm kind of feeling like that's kind of maybe the way I want to go, potentially. So potential gender swap loading. But that's what I'm thinking for right now. And I'm kind of low-key liking this story. So I'm legit giving you guys like the minute by minute updates here. So a couple of other little ideas that I have, which I guess this first one is kind of obvious based on the way that I'm kind of starting to develop the mechanic and the setup and the inciting incident, I guess it would be. So after the mechanic discovers that Robert, which is what I'm calling the robot now, actually grabbed the suitcase, she decides to go ahead, and I've made the mechanic a female. She decides, okay, you know what? As soon as possible, like tomorrow, we're just gonna take the suitcase to the location, because maybe the mechanic was just like, let's just drop it in this alley and go. And Robert's like, we can't do that, bro. Like, did you not hear the message? Lives are at stake. Let's go. Like, get it together. Okay. And so she's like, fine. So we'll take it to the location. And then I'm no longer involved, washing my hands of this. And Robert is like, that's all I ask of you. Thank you. So the next day they go to the location to drop it off. Maybe they contact whoever was in the hologram. Maybe the hologram leaves a contact, whatever. But of course, in order to make it make sense, because I don't want this to be a plot hole, and I don't want the engineer to have been a dummy. Like, bro, you're putting yourself in danger. He puts like an identity scrambler on the hologram, and maybe it's like to a secured location or whatever the case may be, that it would be hard, if not impossible, for any nefarious people within the corporation to be able to track, find, whatever the case may be. And so it could also be that we're forcing the mechanic into it, where, because I'm thinking like, well, okay, what kind of technology can we have going on here? Which is, what I'm thinking now is that perhaps when they opened the suitcase or something like that, or when they decide, so maybe, okay, there's some locks on it. It's like maybe the person who programmed the suitcase is like, in order to even get the location of where to drop it off, you first have to agree to do the drop off, right? And once you agree to that, perhaps the suitcase like scans unexpectedly the person's identity. And so now the mechanic is like inextricably linked to this suitcase. And it's like, if you don't deliver this suitcase, your identity is now connected to it. The only way that your identity is erased from this suitcase and all your connection to it is that you actually deliver it to the place. If not, now you'll have a bounty on your head. You have like 2 days to get it to the location, or your identity is going to be sent out to bounty hunters and the corporation and whatever, and you will be chased down. So your life is on the line, so you better deliver this. I like that. I actually like that. And so that, because that forces the mechanic to actually really stay connected to this. They have to, she has to do this. And that, I think, would automatically kind of, at the start, make her kind of side-eye the engineer. It's like, bro, you put my life on the line. Like, so whoever randomly found this, their life is on the line now, and he's like, sorry, I had to make sure that it was delivered. It's that important, it's that important, So I like that. And I'm legitimately 100% gonna give them a love connection here. What else? Okay, so the other things that I was thinking about, this is not necessarily story structure stuff, but I'm just thinking a little bit about Robert and the mechanic. And so what I'm thinking for Robert is that he or it or whatever feels like they're meant for more. He's meant for more. It's meant for more than just the life of a shop's assistant. And I'm thinking that the mechanic is also like a really great, if not like genius level. Maybe, I don't know if I want to go that far because that might be obvious, but enough of a brainiac in terms of repairs, engineering, all that kind of stuff of robots and things like that, to have been making improvements to Robert over the years, which gave it its personality, its morality, and even its sentience. And so because of all these improvements and things like that and how they've been working together, they're really close friends, actually. And I'm thinking probably that this particular mechanic was always on the night shift, was always in the place by themselves doing these kind of like menial jobs and things like that, or maybe that's what they preferred for whatever reason. And in order for it not to feel lonely and boring, she started making these improvements that would give Robert a personality. So it was like having a friend in the place that you're working with, and you can have banter and it can be amusing and fun and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So just making her experience while working on this job more enjoyable. So, and I like that a lot. I actually really like where this is going, and I'm like, I might need to like actually make this a real story. Okay, so I'm a little bit stuck. I was taking a break and pacing around my office a little bit, and I'm at the point where I need to sort of decide what sort of weapon or technology let me make sure, hopefully you can hear me, what sort of weapon or technology the suitcase is connected to. And it can go a couple of different ways, potentially. So when I was working on the initial idea of it being connected to a weapon that could potentially cause the deaths of thousands or millions or whatever, I was thinking like, okay, so maybe this corporation has been secretly working with some sort of government or organization to create a weapon that they can set off somewhere within, Earth territory or whatever, that would look like it came from or was planted by either another human settlement or even like an alien civilization that they have a treaty with, like a peace treaty, specifically in order to break the peace treaty and cause an intergalactic war for reasons, right? But they want the war, so it's like warmongers, whatever they're called, war hawks, whatever they're called, and they want this war for whatever reason. And so with the civilization or the people group that they have the treaty with, so they're planting this weapon, bomb, whatever. And while I kind of like that, it's not breaking the mold of stories that perhaps we've seen before. While I kind of like that, I also don't usually care for writing stuff that is very connected to political maneuverings between governments and people groups. I'm not usually super into that, but if it's a weapon, if it's connected to a weapon, I don't feel like it can just be a cozy science fiction hero's journey type of vibe. I feel like it becomes something more epic. So I was trying to think of like, okay, is it connected to another technology perhaps? It could be something maybe that would fundamentally and permanently change maybe something about humans or about the galaxy or the planets or whatever that they inhabit. Is it a technology that initially looks like it would be something positive, or at least it's being touted, within the circles that know about it, as something positive for humanity, the galaxy, the solar system, whatever. I probably should reverse that, solar system and galaxy. But it actually is something that could be detrimental. Is it perhaps technology that humanity's not really ready for, that would probably be misused in a way that's detrimental to humanity and the galaxy? If that's the case, was it given to humanity by, an alien civilization specifically because they knew that it would be something that the humans could destroy themselves with? So I'm kind of at an impasse. I wish I could phone a friend. I do have a few people that I could probably ask what they think. Would they be willing to come on a video? I don't know. Send me a little video or something. Perhaps, or perhaps not. Who knows? So that's kind of where I am. I'm not sure where I want to go with what the technology, the weapon, the suitcase represents. And I feel like that's very important before I can move on and start thinking about what the plot will entail for this story. Okay, listen, we're back. It is, admittedly, a couple of days later, 1 or 2 days later right now from my last video, because I really was kind of stuck on what I am going to be doing, and I have made a decision. Also, don't judge me because we've circled back around to this same outfit. We do rewear clothes around here, okay? We're just sitting at a desk. So this morning, after my energy drink and my breakfast, I started to think about this, and I got an aesthetic. I applied rather an aesthetic to this idea that I love, which is like vintage 80s anime. I just love that aesthetic. I love that style, that genre. So now that I'm going vintage 80s anime, cyberpunk vibes, what I started thinking was, okay, I am gonna do the weapon angle. And I think I'm gonna make the weapon a mecha, a giant mecha, which I love. And making that decision has tied a couple of pieces together. And I love it when this happens, when you have pieces that aren't like tightly joined together, just random, not necessarily random, but just little ideas and things. But when you when you make one decision, all of the things start to just flow together. So if it's a giant mecha robot, for those who don't like watch anime, which is just basically a big robot that fights and stuff, it makes the mechanics, role as a robot mechanic / very knowledgeable. I don't know if I want her to be genius level necessarily, but just a very, very skilled robot mechanic. It makes it tie in even more. There's a lot of fun things that can happen there. And then it also opens the door for some very interesting possibilities with Robert, the robot, because Robert is sentient, is what I'm thinking now. Robert is sentient. He has, desires and dreams and goals for his life, or he will begin to have those things. His horizons perhaps can be broadened as to what's possible. And so an image that I was getting that I found very interesting is if the weapon does. So now also side note, the tone of this is coming out of, serious hardcore sci-fi and kind of giving more of that, anime, maybe some more comedic elements, some more fun type of things happening, not just like hardcore stuff. There is still the aspect of those who want to destroy, start a war, do all that kind of stuff, and the mech is the tool with which they're going to do that. But now there can be some really fun things. So what I'm thinking, the potential of, if it looks like they fail, which is always a fun little thing to do in a story, and the suitcase actually does fall into the hands of the bad guys and the robot is actually activated and goes on this, getting ready to go on this killing spree, may or may not succeed. I don't know. I think it could be very interesting for the Mecha and Robert to have an interesting relationship. Not necessarily romantic, obviously. Maybe not obviously. But I think it's very funny and compelling to me if Robert starts to teach the Mecha, because Robert, perhaps also being a robot, maybe has like a soft spot towards this robot that's just being used as a weapon, seemingly against its will, doesn't have any, choice in the matter, rather. And perhaps Robert can become kind of like a teacher to this mech, teaching it what it means to have, its own life. Maybe at some point, the mechanic can do whatever she did to make Robert kind of sentient and importing personality and things to the robot. So maybe the twist can be, without anybody knowing, because it kind of might be like a really fun little gotcha moment to the villains, where they get the thing and they put it in, but as they have been journeying with this, the mechanic actually made some changes to the suitcase, which now I'm thinking contains the core AI or whatever of this mecha, and actually did give it personality, a certain level of sentience to a certain extent, and things like that. And I feel like that could be very, very cool. It could be very cute, depending on what type of personality she decides to put in. And then now the tone of this is changing. And so I'm excited about that. I think that sounds really, really fun. That these angles keep changing. So as I was thinking about that, a question came up for me, which is, well, where does the story go from here? Because now it's kind of like, is it becoming a series? Do I even want to push it in that direction? Because that kind of maybe changes some of the things. So question like, okay, after they do that, which I do really like in terms of them changing the core programming, at least, of the mecha, and then this mecha now sort of becoming an ally to them. The question would be, well, that is the main issue, right? Resolved, right? So what I was thinking was, perhaps then now they go on this little journey. There's like, obviously the answer to that would be there's a bigger bad. And now this mecha and this little ragtag group, I don't know if they're going to collect any other people along the way. Maybe, because that's always kind of fun, right? But this little ragtag group of rebels, yes, they stop the initial sort of thing, but then, obviously the villains have to rally. Perhaps there was another plan in the works all along, whatever the case may be. And I keep saying that this week, whatever the case may be. I don't know why. But anyway, so now this mecha and this little group have to perhaps defend the territories or whatever against, greater enemies that are coming to still try to do the skullduggery and try to still achieve the plan and do the goal that they have. The villain's not going to stop, right? And then that could be very fun. This is coming as sorry, I got a little message on my phone. This is coming as I am talking right now, but to see this mecha, its skills and abilities, new things starting to become unlocked. And so it does kind of become, it's a really kind of fun, I think this is a fun trope where it's continually becoming more powerful in response to the more powerful foes that are, brought. I mean, I guess perhaps I'm trying to think of, are there any stories that I can think of that kind of do that? I don't know, maybe something like Dragon Ball Z, maybe something like One Punch Man, where they always find a way to meet the challenge, and it's not necessarily easy right away. Maybe sometimes it takes time, maybe they have to really push their own limits and things like that, but that's always kind of fun to see, right? We like to see that happen, right? So this is becoming a very fun little story to me. Thank you, Past Ashley. Okay, welcome back. I have to look at the side and make sure I'm recording. Welcome back to the future, the present. All right. So now here is the basic overall situation that I came up with for the story, with the general sort of story structure, beats, type vibes. Now these are subject to change if I ever actually develop this into a thing. Okay. A lot of these things will probably be fleshed out. They will change a little bit. Not even a little bit, a lot. Why did I say a little bit? Probably a lot, especially if, as I'm thinking, this is now listen, if you see me avert my eyes, you know where they're going, okay? Retro sci-fi anime, cyberpunk genre, but it could be maybe the first season of a series, potentially, I don't know, maybe the first few episodes. I don't know, maybe this might be too much to try to fit into the first few episodes. But yeah, so here we go. The story is an apprentice botsmith mechanic, her obsolete robot sidekick, and an engineer on the run try to stop a mega corporation and its Warhawk government overseers from releasing a world-destroying mech, killing millions and dragging the territories into intergalactic war by blaming it on a longtime ally. So that's the overall general, what would that be called? That would be like what the, girl, I can't remember the name of these things. The, log line, but probably like a really bad log line because I didn't do any of the stuff that you're supposed to try to do in a log line, probably. There's a structure to log lines. I didn't care about that. I just wanted to get the story together. So that's the general idea. Now, the characters, okay? I'm doing that for editing me to know this is a place to put a timestamp. Girl, where are these words? Anyway, so the characters. The mechanic. An apprentice mechanic at a neighborhood repair shop, she is surviving financially by the skin of her teeth. Having been kicked out of her previous apartment, the mech shop owner is allowing her to live above the shop in a room barely bigger than a crawl space. In exchange, she works the unpopular overnight shift. She is an immensely skilled, clever, and resourceful botsmith. However, I didn't say however right. She is a resourceful botsmith, however, and could certainly hold her own in a more prestigious shop, perhaps even opening her own. But she suffers from a lack of confidence due to the fact that she has no formal training from a recognized tech school. Her goal is to attend such a program so that she can get a job with XYZ Corp. That's not going to actually be the name, but that's just, I couldn't think of a name, so that's the big bad, which will allow her to support her elderly grandmother and niece, the daughter of her beloved late older brother. But she is severely lacking in funds. She took a discarded and obsolete assist bot and has been progressively and lovingly giving it a complete overhaul, even successfully uploading a personality program and a sentience chip of her own design. This alone would be enough to grant her entrance to the coveted engineering program, but her lack of finances holds her back. She's been saving every extra dollar and taking on side jobs to save enough for this program, but at times it feels like drops in a vast bucket of need, an almost insurmountable amount. But she's young, energetic, and hopeful. And of course, when I'm actually digging into the character and developing, she will have a name, of course, but there will be weaknesses and strengths, probably go a little bit deeper into the goal, her needs, all of that kind of stuff to really make her a more well-rounded character. The robot sidekick. I've been calling him Robert, so I'll probably, as I read through what I wrote, be referring to him as Robert. I don't know why he's going to be Robert the robot, but that's what he is, okay? So anyway, the robot sidekick. Built by the mechanic, imbued with an honorable personality modeled after her brother, and sentience, Robert is often the Jiminy Cricket voice of reason for the mechanic, who sometimes allows her intense focus on achieving her goal to cloud her better judgment. Very brief, I do have a kind of an arc that I want to do with the robot as well, because I feel like he's very interesting. I have some interesting things in my mind for Mr. Man, okay? And the engineer, a talented engineer at XYZ Corp, he couldn't sit back quietly when he discovered the Corp's plans to create a mecha capable of wiping out entire territories under orders from an agency with plans to use the robot to break a peace treaty and enter Earth territories into a massive galactic war with their ally by making a catastrophic attack appear to have been initiated by said ally. Take a deep breath. He secretly took key components of the top secret project and scattered them in various shipments of standard parts in order to buy some time, but beyond that point, he had no real plan. So now we are getting into the story structure, part 1. First, story structure the first, okay? So the first part of the Dan Harmon story structure is called You, which is the comfort zone / status quo, where our character starts. So we meet the mechanic. During the day, she and Robert run around the city, taking on quick repair gigs and miscellaneous errands to make money. And at night, she works the late shift at the shop, doing inventory, cleaning and repairing tools, and otherwise making sure the shop is in good working order for the day mechanics. We see her energetic resourcefulness and get a sense of her financial issues and desire to attend a prestigious engineering program. Perhaps she does a repair for one of her regulars, a head custodian of some sort, on the campus of the program she wants to attend, and they converse. She returns to the shop for her shift. On his or her way out, the shop owner tells her about an important notice they got from XYZ Corp about missing parts, and if any turn up in the shipments with certain serial numbers, they should notify the Corp immediately. They offer a huge reward for any pieces found. The owner jokes about the mechanic keeping the reward money if one of the missing parts turns up in the shipment tonight, implying that it's impossible that it would happen to such a small shop as theirs. But on a serious note, owner knows that she deserves to be in the program as much as anyone else. And this, to me, has a little bit of like a Willy Wonka golden ticket energy, which I do like that because I love Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Okay. And I also want the owner to be a positive influence in the mechanic's life. So not like a janky owner who is terrible and all that kind of stuff. Number 2, need. So basically it's the character wanting something, needing something, or really I think of it like the inciting incident. Now, if that's what Dan Harmon actually means by need, I don't know, but that's how I interpret it. Again, we are learning how to use this story structure. So the inciting incident. The mechanic is working the night shift with Robert, taking inventory of the recent shipment of standard parts from XYZ Corp when a mysterious suitcase, far heavier than it appears, is discovered in the back of the shipping container. It's not on the shipping manifest. Robert has to carry it to a workbench as it is too heavy for a normal person to carry. Bringing back these cards, you know. Her heart is pounding as she examines the suitcase and discovers that it is indeed one of the missing parts. She notifies the Corp and immediately begins planning how she will use the money to attend school after giving some of it to the shop owner for being kind to her. As they wait for the Corp to arrive, the suitcase pops open and a message plays explaining how important it is that the part doesn't fall into the hands of XYZ Corp. If it does, it will mean the loss of millions of lives and intergalactic war. Her heart drops. Robert says they have to run with the suitcase even though they already notified the Corp. Even though they already notified the Corp. Before she can decide what to do, the Corp shows up to collect. The process of collection and transfer starts. The mechanic is feeling extremely conflicted. One of the retrieval specialists notices Robert and is impressed, never having seen an obsolete model performing like that. She mentions she rebuilt him from the ground up with personality and sentience, obvious from Robert's distaste for the group. The specialist is extremely impressed and gives her their card, saying the Corp is always interested in talent such as hers. She should go to the main offices the next business day for an interview. And I wanted to put that in there because I feel like that's something I can use if I were to expand the story. I don't yet quite know exactly how or where, but I feel like that little note could be something for some conflict or some story points in the future. So, the process is interrupted by a mysterious group and a firefight ensues. The mechanic and Robert escape during the chaos. So the next one, number 3, is go. They enter an unfamiliar situation / cross the threshold, which I think in another story structure would also be like they decide basically to go on the journey. So when they get to a quiet spot, the mechanic realizes Robert grabbed the suitcase. After some back and forth, the mechanic reluctantly agrees to deliver it. In the process of accepting the terms of delivery as laid out in the message, her identity is temporarily linked to the suitcase as a fail-safe / form of security meant to ensure that whoever finds it follows through, or else their ID will be blasted to the corp and various bounty hunters. At the drop-off, they meet the engineer and maybe some other accomplices. I feel like this is a point where we could bring in some other characters. And I actually do write a little bit more where, potentially there's some, well let me just read on. Who, along with 2 or 3, so maybe other accomplices, who, along with 2 or 3 other concerned corp employees, coordinated the sabotage. They drop the suitcase and her ID is removed. As they do so, there was a little explanation, not much, about why this piece is so important. The suitcase contains the AI core and the key program of the weapon. The mechanic and Robert are leaving and are safely out of view when the engineer and his crew are attacked by either corp agents or the mysterious group from before. Perhaps one of the accomplices flipped on them. The group is about to be taken out when the mechanic, who has had her conscience pricked, and Robert rush in to help, escaping with the engineer, the remaining accomplice, maybe, and the suitcase. She's in deep now, and Robert is proud. So, the reason I decided to have it to where the mechanic could have just gone on with her own life and gotten away is because I wanted the main character to decide to go on the journey. And I think that also her deciding, even though she could have just gone on with her life as normal, her deciding to step in and help, I think is, it helps us to see a little bit of her character as a good guy, basically. And it also, I think, gets us on the journey of her character arc. And of course, as I mentioned, there would be more character development. I would want to really kind of in the beginning show that she, basically some of her little bad points, her little weaknesses is that she is very focused, perhaps. She really only cares about trying to get to the bag a little bit. And she has a good positive reason for that. A reason based in love and care for her family. But she also kind of is just like, I have to take care of myself and I'm not really trying to involve myself in other people's mess. And then seeing her go on this journey and her making that little choice, kind of gritting her teeth along the way, I think helps get us down the path of her character development. So, number 4, search. Adapt to the situation / road of trials. And this is basically, I think in the story structure, it would be kind of like basically the journey, the conflict, the back and forth, growing, learning skills, all that good stuff. And having skirmishes and things with the bad guys. So here we go. The crew goes on a journey to stop the powers that be from starting an intergalactic war. Some things that could happen. Now, this is a very thick part of the story, right? This is where most of the story is happening in my understanding of this story structure. So in an effort, since I was thinking of this as kind of like a series, in an effort to not be here for 85 years, trying to come up with exactly what happens in this point, I did a bullet list of potential things that could happen in the story. And this area will really be fleshed out and defined based on choices that I make about the characters, really solidifying certain key points about the story, the world building itself, things like that. So these are just some general possible ideas of stuff that could happen, very general. But we're just here as an exercise. So they have to find the other pieces of the mecha, perhaps, if all of them haven't been found by the Corp, which is also a possibility. The mechanics' bot-smithing skills are put to the test in various ways. The mechanic and the engineer fall in love, which would definitely be a part of this story because I love a good romance. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Perhaps they have to deal with the potential traitorous accomplice if such a character exists. Joining forces with the mysterious group that has been skirmishing with the Corp. Maybe they belong to the allied alien race that would have been blamed for the attack, potentially. Robert continues to be improved by the mechanic in his abilities and continues developing in his personhood. So some things that I maybe saw for Robert would be like perhaps as they go on this journey and she's working on him, and maybe even he begins to be able to improve himself a little bit, but seeing actual physical and mechanical abilities for Robert begin to increase, maybe increased speed, strength, climbing ability, whatever. It really would depend on the logic of the world and things like that. But seeing Robert's physical abilities grow, as well as I mentioned, him coming more into his personhood, him really developing his character, his personality, things like that as he's on this journey, having his own thoughts about what they should do with the mecha and things like that. So they perhaps travel to various territories, maybe even the homeland of the alien allies. There would occur, of course, be skirmishes with the corporation, perhaps other bounty hunters and things like that. Maybe the mechanic, and I really like this idea, so I would want to find a way to stick this in there, but maybe the mechanic builds a small army of bots made from obsolete junk parts. I really feel like this is a fun idea. And then Robert can train and help modify them, as well as the engineer. And I definitely, one of the, I guess, weak points of this particular outline of stories that I have not really given the engineer his full reign, his full head, I think is what the phrase is. Like, I haven't really fleshed out the engineer and used his skills and things like that. So that would definitely be something that if I were expanding the story, I would look at clever ways and I can't think of the word, but good ways to use this character. Like, I don't want to waste this engineer character. Like, all of a sudden he's on this thing and now he's no longer a great engineer that was working at XYZ Corp. No, he still has those skills and he would be using them. So I would just need to figure out a way for that to happen and for them to work together, where they complement each other. So, and possibly, okay, so continuing this, and I just interrupted myself. Robert helps train and modify the bots, the army of bots, as well as the engineer, who maybe prior was a little prideful about his position and education, even as he has an essentially good heart and great qualities in general. And I think that also giving Robert the role of training and modifying this type of bot would foreshadow what he would be, the role he would play later on in the story, which we will get to. Number 5, find, which is where they get what they want. And so get what they want. Okay. So here we go. There's a big problem. XYZ Corp, perhaps with the help of the traitor, if again, that character exists, has been able to develop the AI core of the mech, but perhaps it was like a sloppy rush job compared to the original core due to time constraints based on the schedule of the attack. And perhaps the Corp has also collected all of the remaining scattered pieces just in time to be on schedule to do this attack. How is our crew going to stop them? The mechanic ends up reprogramming the core and giving it sentience at the insistence of Robert, a personality and morals. And then the plan now is to swap the cores. So the mech is launched, the attack is underway. And by this point in the story, I'm thinking that the Corp and the government know exactly who the rebels are. And so because of that, they plan to attack the home territory of the mechanic and the engineer, meaning their loved ones, in particular, the mechanic's grandmother and niece, will die first. So that kind of adds a little extra push, of urgency. And it's a race against time to get to the mech, and it requires all of the resources and allies that they've gathered on their journey thus far. It's a huge struggle, but they finally fight their way into the core of the mech. So next, I keep hitting this. Sorry if that was loud. I don't know why I have to keep doing this hand motion. 6 is take and pay a heavy price. So they start the process of removing and replacing the cores, but this will not go uncontested, of course. There is interference, maybe from corporation mercs, robot sentries, etc., like within the mech. The engineer, Robert, and the obsolete robo army, and whatever other allies they may have, hold off the mercs, and the mechanic is tasked with completing the swap because she's the programmer of the new AI. And side note, I would need to give a compelling reason, and this might be like maybe being more detailed about the characters, or kind of taking some things away from the engineer and adding them to the mechanic, but there would be a compelling reason for her to be programming it and not the engineer. But in any case, she gets inside the core of the mech while there's all this skirmish and battle happening outside. And when the doors close, it's eerily quiet inside with just the whirring of mechanisms and the soothing beeping of the systems. It's almost like being in a cathedral. There is some sort of conversation that happens between the mecha and the mechanic that will likely reinforce the theme, whatever it ends up being, and show kind of like the completion of the mechanic's character arc, who she has become on this journey, really becoming her hero's journey, basically. There is, as well as the engineer, I want him to have, all three of them to have their little hero's journey, right? So there is still some resistance by the mech itself as the mechanic is inputting new hardware, possibly to the point that she is required to force and hold it in place while the swap completes. Maybe, now, let me interject here real quick. As I was getting to the end of this story structure, I started to kind of falter a little bit. Wasn't quite 100% sure what direction to take the ending of the story, or at least this season, whatever it would end up being, this book of the trilogy, excuse me. So we kind of got a little loosey-goosey at the end here, kind of not really pinpointing any particular thing. So it's not like a super tight ending. If you have any ideas, please let me know of ways it could go. But anyway, so maybe she's forced to hold it in place while the swap completes, and maybe this could possibly cause her to lose a hand or both of her hands, effectively ending her aspirations as a botsmith. But it is a sacrifice by this time in the story she's willing to make. Maybe there's even a chance that she could die prior to the new AI taking hold. But in whatever way it could possibly go, in a final surge of energy, the mechanic is knocked unconscious, but the swap is complete. The team has been successful. The attack abruptly halts as the personality and sentience kicks in to the mech. So 7, return, which is basically, I guess, the characters returning with the the thing that they took, right? So now the mecha becomes an ally of our group. XYZ Corp is exposed and the groups are heroes. The group are heroes. That's option A. Or the alternate possibility, if, which might lean more towards it being a series, is maybe the group are now nomads wandering the territories. Maybe they're hunted by the corp and the government and bounty hunters and things like that, but they have this mecha who is now part of their team. And changed, which is the final changed. I keep hitting this, which is the final piece of this story structure. The characters change, essentially, like what it says. Maybe the governments come together, if it's the positive end, to honor the little ragtag band of heroes, also providing ample money as a reward. Now the mechanic has all the finance she needed. Her family is well taken care of, but she's kind of left adrift without the physical ability to botsmith. Robert has taken the mecha under his wing, so Robert is training this new mecha, and I thought it might be cute, since I'm having Robert sort of being like the mechanic's big brother in personality. Maybe the mecha could be kind of like his daughter, would be like his daughter, his young daughter. So that could be a very interesting sort of relationship, I think, dynamic of this huge mecha being trained by and basically brought up by this much smaller, normal human sized, maybe slightly larger than human sized, obsolete helper robot. So that's what happened. That's what's happening with Robert and the mecha. And then I also want there to be, of course, a positive resolution with the mechanic and the engineer being in a relationship, but she still can't hide her melancholy. So if I go the route of her hand being taken and this kind of like messing up her aspirations, maybe the engineer builds her a new hand or new hands, perhaps, as they kind of go on this journey. I don't know if this is the direction that I would want to go in terms of her hands being taken, but what I would want is is what? There is definitely a change in who she is, her personality, her character, personality to a certain extent, her character, but definitely in her goals and what she feels like she needs in order to prove herself, in order to provide. Now, if I do the thing where, you know, the government does give them a bunch of money and that's no longer a concern, you know, her family is taken care of, all that kind of stuff. Now we have to give her something else to work towards. But we could, if they're nomads, you know, that has its own whole like trajectory in and of itself. Unresolved things, you know, she still needs to take care of her family. Maybe the family could go on the journey. Maybe it could feel like a little bit of like what's that great anime, Cowboy Bebop type of vibe where they're traveling around doing stuff. And what they would be doing, of course, would be determined by the antagonists, the world building of the galaxies, you know, things like that. But anyway, so that's the end, guys. That's where I got kind of faltered at the end a little bit there. Kind of didn't have an ending of the story that I felt super, super solid about, because it feels like a story that's going to go on longer than just the scope of this little brief story that we told. I feel like the characters would continue on, and so there would be new adventures, new goals, things like that. But in any case, I keep saying that's like the phrase of the year. In any case, thank you so much for joining me. Let me know if you have any tips about how I should structure these videos. One of my concerns is that maybe it's kind of a little dull listening to me just tell you what I came up with. But my goal with this is to hopefully give you a glimpse inside how one person, you know, how a story coach kind of starts developing a story, and hopefully that will help you as you are developing your stories if you're feeling like you're stuck anywhere. Because, side note, there's a little, you know, a little extra at the end here. As an artist, when I would be, you know, training, practicing art, I found it very helpful to watch somebody else draw. So the moments in class where we were watching the teacher approach the subject, how he was doing it, like the way that he built from, you know, the gesture drawing to the finished piece, that told me so much more than just seeing the finished piece. So that's my hope with pretty much everything we do on this channel, is to show you the gesture drawing, basically, of approaching writing a story or other little elements that may be challenging. I find it helpful to see how other people approach a problem, a task, and that gives me strategies for how to approach it. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope it was somewhat interesting. And in the future, I will tell you why I continue doing these Storymatics. It is a project that is coming up. So that is for farther in the future, when there are actually people here on this channel. Until then, listen, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Okay. Let me know what you would do with these cards. I would love to see what you do. Even if you don't do like the full story structure thing. Listen, if you want to spend some time typing in the comments, shooting me a little email or something like that about how you actually approach it, if you do flesh it out into a full story structure, I would be happy to come on here and share your idea and of course give you credit. I'm not trying to steal credit for your idea. If you would be comfortable, but I would love to see what you would do with it. But in any case, girl, I'm going to be so sick of saying that. You're going to be sick of hearing me say that. It just slips out. Goodbye. Have a good rest of your day. Love you. See you next time. That was the most useless hand motion.